I never thought the worst humiliation of my life would come from a family lunch. Not a stranger. Not the world. Family. I stood outside my daughter's house that Sunday afternoon, smoothing down my old coat, telling myself to breathe. The mirror in my car visor didn't lie, my hair was thin and grey, my hands were cracked from years of scrubbing floors, and my shoes were worn at the heels. I smelled faintly of lemon cleaner no matter how much soap I used. That smell followed me everywhere, like proof of the life I'd lived. 40 years of cleaning other people's homes will do that to you. Still, I came with a smile. I always did. I carried a small homemade apple pie, wrapped in foil, because that's what you bring when your daughter invites you for lunch. You don't show up empty-handed. That's how I was raised. Respect first, always. The moment I stepped inside, the noise hit me, laughter, clinking glasses, music playing too loud. The dining room was full. My daughter Sarah's in-laws were there, cousins I barely knew, people dressed in pressed shirts and perfume that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. Then I heard him. Richard. My son-in-law. He didn't even wait for me to say hello. He turned, looked straight at me, and shouted across the room like he was announcing a joke. Attention everyone. The stinky cleaner is here. The room went quiet for half a second. Then laughter. Real laughter. Grown adults laughing like it was the funniest thing they'd heard all day. My ears rang. My chest tightened so hard I thought I might fall over. I felt heat rush into my face, felt my eyes sting, but I refused to cry. I had learned a long time ago that crying in front of people like Richard only fed them. I stood there frozen, clutching that pie like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." Someone else snorted. A woman whispered, "Did he really say that?" Richard smirked, arms crossed, proud of himself. He always did that, humiliate first, smile after. I looked around for my daughter. Sarah stood near the kitchen doorway, pale as a ghost. Her mouth opened, then closed. I saw the war inside her, the fear, the shame, the habit of staying quiet to keep the peace. That hurt worse than the insult. I swallowed hard and turned toward the door. I wasn't going to beg for respect. I had survived being widowed at 45. I had scrubbed toilets at midnight and mopped offices before sunrise. I could survive walking out of one more room where I wasn't wanted. I took one step. Then I felt a hand grab my arm. Firm. Warm. Familiar. Mom, wait. Sarah's voice shook. She leaned in close, so close I could feel her breath against my ear. Please, she whispered. Don't go. Not yet. I looked at her eyes. They were wet. Angry. Determined in a way I hadn't seen in years. That's when I knew something was different. Richard laughed behind us. What? She can't take a joke now. Relax. It's just facts. She cleans toilets for a living. That was it. Something inside me snapped, not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet and final. I turned back around slowly. I looked at Richard. Really looked at him. The expensive watch. The smug mouth. The man who had borrowed money from me and never paid it back. The man who had hinted, more than once, that my house was too big for someone my age. The man who thought I was nothing. I set the pie down on the table. My voice surprised even me when I spoke. It wasn't shaky. It wasn't loud. It was steady. Shame, I said. The room went silent again, but this time, no one laughed. Richard scoffed. Oh please. Don't get dramatic. I stepped forward, my back straight despite the years bending it. You tried to take the only thing I had left in this world, I said calmly. My house. My dignity. My life's work. Sarah moved beside me. Then, God help me, my granddaughter Chloe stepped forward too. Phone in her hand. Red light blinking. Recording. Richard's smile faltered for the first time. And that's when I realized. This lunch wasn't an accident. This humiliation wasn't the end. It was the beginning of his downfall. The room didn't breathe. That's the only way I can describe it. 30 people standing there, forks halfway to mouths, glasses frozen mid-air, like time itself decided to sit down and watch. Richard's smirk cracked just a little. "Whoa, whoa," he said, holding up his hands like I was some crazy old woman about to start screaming. "What are you talking about now?" I didn't answer him right away. I looked around that dining room. At the polished table. The fancy chairs. The people who had laughed seconds ago, and now wouldn't meet my eyes. Funny how quick laughter dies when truth walks in. 4 years, I said slowly, you made me feel small. You called me dirty. You called me useless. You made jokes about my smell, my clothes, my work. Also I'd believe I was nothing. Richard rolled his eyes. You're twisting things. No, I said. I'm finally saying them out loud. Sarah's hand tightened around my arm. Her jaw was set. I could feel her shaking, but she didn't step back. For the first time in a long time, she stayed right where she belonged, next to her mother. You all think I'm just some cleaner, I continued. But this house I live in. I paid for it myself. 40 years of scrubbing floors, emptying trash cans, cleaning up messes people like you never wanted to touch. I pointed at Richard. My finger didn't tremble. You saw that house and thought it was wasted on me. A murmur rippled through the room. Richard's mother shifted uncomfortably. His father's face darkened. Richard laughed, but it sounded thin. This is ridiculous. You're embarrassing yourself. That's when Chloe spoke. My granddaughter. 22 years old. Strong spine. Clear voice. No, she said. You embarrassed yourself. Every head turned to her. She lifted her phone higher. I recorded everything. Not just today. 4 months. Richard's face drained of color. What? He snapped. That's illegal. She didn't flinch. So is planning to steal an elderly woman's house. The word elderly hit the room like a dropped plate. Richard turned to Sarah fast. What the hell is she talking about? Sarah stepped forward then. Her voice broke, but she didn't stop. I found the documents, she said. The fake papers. The notes. The recordings. Richard stared at her like he'd never seen her before. You went through my stuff. I went through lies, she shot back. Years of them. Silence swallowed us whole. Richard's father cleared his throat. Son, what is she talking about? Richard opened his mouth. Closed it. Ran a hand through his hair. It's not what it sounds like, he said quickly. I was just planning. In case something happened. I laughed. A soft, tired laugh. You plan to put me in a cheap nursing home, I said. You plan to sell my house. You plan to erase me. A woman at the table gasped. Richard's mother stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Richard, tell me this isn't true. He didn't answer. That was answer enough. A man I didn't recognize stepped forward then, grey suit, calm eyes. He pulled out a badge. My name is Mr. Peterson, he said evenly. District Attorney's Office. The room exploded into whispers. Richard staggered back. What the hell is this? This, Mr. Peterson said, is the result of months of investigation. Financial abuse. Conspiracy to commit estate fraud. Attempted exploitation of a vulnerable adult. I didn't know those words before. I knew them now. Richard's knees buckled. He grabbed a chair. This is a mistake, he muttered. I just needed money. I have debts. His brother stepped forward, voice sharp. So your solution was robbing a 70-year-old woman. Richard's father spoke next, slow and heavy. You brought shame on this family. I watched it all like I was standing outside my own body. 4 years, I had been invisible. Now every eye was on me. Richard looked up at me then. Tears in his eyes. Real or fake, I didn't care. Mother-in-law, he said softly. You're a Christian woman. You believe in forgiveness. I walked closer until I stood right in front of him. 4 years, I said quietly, I opened my heart to you. I gave you money I never asked back for. I trusted you with my family. I leaned in so only he could hear. You don't deserve my forgiveness. The room stayed silent. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat again. There's also a temporary restraining order. You will not approach Mrs. Eleanor or her property. Sarah pulled papers from her purse and dropped them on the table. Divorce papers, she said. And an eviction notice. You have 72 hours. Richard stared at the papers like they were written in another language. His world collapsed right there between the salad bowls and wine glasses. I felt something unexpected then. Peace. Not joy. Not revenge. Peace. The morning of the court hearing, I woke up before the sun. My body did that thing it always does when something big is coming, joints aching, chest tight, mind racing through memories I'd buried years ago. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at my hands. These hands had scrubbed floors, washed strangers' toilets, wrung out mop water till my fingers cracked open. And now these same hands were supposed to hold steady in a courtroom while the man, who tried to erase me, sat just a few feet away. Sarah knocked softly on my bedroom door. You ready, Mom? I nodded, even though I wasn't sure what ready meant anymore. The courthouse looked cold. Grey stone. Tall steps. One of those buildings that makes you feel small the second you walk in, like your life is just another file in a cabinet. Inside, the air smelled like dust and old coffee. People whispered. Shoes clicked. Somewhere a phone buzzed and got silenced fast. And then I saw him. Richard. No suit. No confidence. No smug grin like he used to wear at family dinners when he talked over everyone. He was in an orange jumpsuit, cuffs on his wrists, chains at his ankles. The man who once joked about assets and returns couldn't even walk without help now. For a second, something twisted in my chest. Not pity. Recognition. This was the real him. Stripped. Cornered. Exposed. He didn't look at me at first. Kept his eyes forward like maybe if he didn't see me, I wouldn't exist. Funny thing was, that's how he'd treated me for years, like I was background noise. A piece of furniture. Something old that came with the house. We sat down. Sarah held my hand. Chloe sat behind us, quiet but alert, eyes sharp like she was memorizing everything. The judge came in. Everyone stood. Everyone Saturday. And just like that, my life was being discussed like a transaction. Richard's lawyer spoke first. He was smooth. Polished. The kind of man who uses words like cushions, trying to soften ugly truths. He talked about misunderstandings. About cultural gaps. About how older people sometimes confuse intentions. I felt my jaw tighten. Then he said it. Mrs. Eleanor is elderly and vulnerable. My client was only trying to help manage her affairs. Help. That word tasted bitter. Mr. Peterson stood up slow, calm like a man who knew time was on his side. Your Honor, he said, we will demonstrate that this was not help. This was a calculated plan to remove a woman from her home and strip her of everything she owned. The lights dimmed. The first recording played. Richard's voice filled the courtroom. She won't know what she's signing. We just need a doctor willing to say she's confused. I felt the air leave the room. The second recording. Once she's in a facility, nobody questions where the money goes. My stomach flipped. I glanced at the jury. One woman pressed her lips together. A man shook his head slowly. The third recording hit harder. Why should a cleaner live in a paid-off house? That place could be making money. Cleaner. That word again. Richard finally looked at me then. His eyes were red, wet, panicked. For years he'd made me feel dirty for how I earned my living. Now those same words were echoing back at him in front of strangers who could see exactly who he was. The documents came next. Fake medical notes. Draft guardianship forms. Lists of my accounts. My house circled in red ink. I felt my hands shake. Not from fear. From rage. That house wasn't an investment. It was where my husband died. Where my daughter learned to walk. Where I cried alone at night after 12-hour shifts. Chloe testified. My granddaughter. Barely 22. Standing tall. He said my grandmother was an obstacle, she said. He said it would be easier if she wasn't around. The room went dead silent. Sarah followed. Her voice broke when she talked about betrayal. About realizing the man she loved was capable of destroying the woman who raised her. Then it was my turn. I stood up slow. My legs felt heavy. My back burned. But I stood straight. I am 70 years old, I said. I am not confused. I am tired. Some people nodded. I worked my whole life. I buried my husband. I raised my daughter alone. And I trusted this man. I looked directly at Richard. You didn't want my house. You wanted me gone. The judge thanked me. Saturday. The verdict came later. Guilty. Every word landed like a door slamming shut. Richard cried when they led him away. Real tears this time. Ugly ones. He turned toward me. I didn't think it would end like this, he said. I met his eyes. This is exactly how it ends when you try to erase someone, I said quietly. Outside the courthouse, the sun felt different. Brighter. But peace didn't come right away. Because justice doesn't erase what someone tried to do. And as we drove home in silence, I realized something heavy had shifted. The man who humiliated me for years was going to prison. But the damage he caused didn't disappear that easy. And deep down, I knew the story wasn't finished yet, not in court, not in our family, and not inside me. People think justice feels like fireworks. Like once the verdict drops, everything suddenly makes sense again. Like the world snaps back into place and your heart knows how to breathe. That's not how it went for me. The days after the trial were quiet in a way that felt unnatural. Too quiet. No court dates. No lawyers calling. No fear sitting in my chest every morning. Just silence. And silence can be loud. I'd wake up before dawn out of habit, sit at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee going cold, and stare at the same spot on the wall where the paint chipped years ago. That spot had seen everything. My husband pacing when money was tight. Sarah doing homework at that same table. Richard sitting there once, smiling like he owned the place. Now he was gone. But the memories weren't. Sarah came over almost every day. At first, she didn't say much either. She'd clean dishes that were already clean. Rearrange things that didn't need moving. It was her way of staying busy so she didn't fall apart. One afternoon, she finally broke. I feel stupid, she said suddenly, hands shaking as she dried a plate. For what? I asked. For not seeing it sooner. For letting him talk about you like that. For believing him when he said you were just sensitive. I took the towel from her hands and held her wrists. Abusers don't show their teeth right away, I said. They smile first. She cried then. The kind of crying that comes from shame mixed with grief. I held her like I used to when she was little, rocking back and forth on the kitchen chair. Chloe handled it differently. She was angry. Not loud angry. Focused angry. She started researching elder abuse laws. Financial exploitation cases. Safeguards. She printed articles and left them on my table like warnings. People think this stuff only happens to lonely old folks with no family, she said one night. But it happens right inside homes. with suits and smiles. I watched my granddaughter turn into something fierce. And it scared me, but it also made me proud. A week later, Richard's mother showed up. I hadn't expected that. She stood on my porch with red eyes and a face that looked 10 years older than the last time I saw her. She held her purse tight to her chest like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "I didn't raise him to be this," she said before I could even invite her in. I believed her. She sat at my table, hands folded, voice shaking as she apologized over and over. "Not the fake kind. The broken kind. He always wanted more," she whispered. "More money. More status." I thought it was ambition. Ambition doesn't steal houses from old women. I didn't say that out loud. But I thought it. When she left, she hugged me, really hugged me, and for a second, I felt sorry for her. Loving a monster doesn't mean you created one. Sometimes it just means you're left cleaning up what they destroyed. The real shift came a month later. I got a letter. Not from Richard. From the county. It said my case had triggered a broader investigation. Turns out Richard wasn't as careful as he thought. Other families had come forward. Elderly clients. Suspicious documents. Disappearing savings. I wasn't his first attempt. That knowledge sat heavy on my chest. I kept thinking, what if Sarah hadn't looked through those papers? What if Chloe hadn't been curious? What if I'd signed something just to keep the peace? That thought scared me more than court ever did. So I changed things. I closed accounts. Opened new ones. Added protections. Updated my will. Put everything in writing so clear even a liar couldn't twist it. For the first time in my life, I felt in control of my own future. And then something unexpected happened. People started calling. Women from church. Old neighbors. Friends of friends. I heard what happened. My sister's going through something similar. Can you tell me what signs to look for? I didn't plan on becoming anyone's example. But I talked. I told them how small it starts. How jokes turn into insults. How concern turns into control. How paperwork becomes a weapon. Every conversation felt like taking a piece of my power back. Sarah moved closer. Sold the house she'd shared with Richard. Bought a smaller place 5 minutes from mine. She said she needed to start fresh somewhere that didn't smell like lies. Chloe helped her paint the walls. Bright colors. No shadows. The first Sunday dinner in Sarah's new place felt different. Lighter. No one watching what they said. No tension sitting at the table. Halfway through the meal, Sarah looked at me and smiled. "You know," she said, "he used to call you weak." I raised an eyebrow. "He had no idea," Chloe said. And they both laughed. For the first time in years, the laughter didn't feel careful. It felt free. That night, alone in my house, I walked from room to room slowly. Touched the door frames. The windows. The walls. This place was still mine. No signatures. No tricks. No chains. Just history. And survival. But deep down, I knew something else was coming. Because when a predator falls, the truth doesn't stay buried. And what we uncovered next would prove just how close I came to losing everything. I used to think the danger ended once the doors of the courtroom closed behind him. Turns out, some messes keep leaking long after you think the pipe's been shut off. It started with a knock on my door one Tuesday morning. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just firm enough to make my stomach tighten. I opened it slow. 2 men stood on my porch. Suits. Badges clipped to their belts. Faces serious but not cruel. "Mrs. Eleanor," one of them asked. "That's when you know your day's about to change." They explained they were financial investigators. Said my name had come up again. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because my case cracked something open. Apparently, when Richard got sloppy, he didn't just leave fingerprints. He left a whole trail. They asked if they could sit. I poured coffee with hands steadier than I felt. Sat across from them at my table, the same table where I'd once been treated like furniture. They laid it out slow. Richard hadn't only planned to take my house. He'd already tried smaller moves before that. Quiet ones. Test runs. A credit inquiry in my name I never approved. A draft deed that never got filed. A loan application that stopped halfway through. All blocked at the last minute. Not because he changed his mind. Because something went wrong each time. And that scared me more than anything else. I realized I hadn't just survived a plan, I'd survived multiple attempts I never even knew about. After they left, I sat there staring at my coffee long after it went cold. I felt violated in a way that didn't show bruises. Someone had been circling my life like a vulture, measuring what I was worth on paper. I called Sarah. She drove over immediately. Didn't say much. Just sat beside me, jaw tight, eyes hard. I trusted him with our mail, she said quietly. With your information. With everything. That sentence held more pain than any shouting match ever could. We didn't cry that day. We got practical. We pulled credit reports. Froze accounts. Changed numbers. Notified banks. Every step felt like locking another door that should have never been open in the first place. That night, Chloe stayed over. She sat at the table with her laptop open, fingers flying like she was chasing something down. I found something, she said after midnight. She turned the screen toward us. Emails. Old ones. Between Richard and a man we didn't recognize. Dated back almost 2 years. He wasn't just planning. He was rehearsing. Talking strategy. Timing. Weak points. How to make it look natural. How to keep Sarah emotionally off balance so she wouldn't question paperwork. I felt sick reading his words. Not angry. Cold. This wasn't desperation. This was calculation. Chloe shut the laptop. He never loved control by accident, she said. He started it. That was the night I stopped asking myself why. Some people don't need reasons. They just need opportunity. A few weeks later, something else happened. A woman from church pulled me aside after Sunday service. She leaned in close and whispered, "Can I ask you something personal?" I nodded. My brother-in-law keeps asking about my mom's house. Says it's just planning ahead. That sentence made my blood go cold. I didn't give her advice like some expert. I gave her truth. I told her to slow down. To protect documents. To trust her gut even when it feels rude. She hugged me like I'd saved her from a burning building. Word spread. Not fast. Quiet. Women started stopping by my house. Sitting at my table. Drinking coffee. Asking questions they were scared to ask out loud. I wasn't trying to lead anything. But I realized something strange. All my life, I'd been invisible. Now people were listening. One afternoon, Sarah said something that stuck with me. You know what scares men like him the most, she said. What? I asked. Women comparing notes. She was right. Silence had been his shield. And silence was gone. Then came the call that none of us expected. Richard wanted to talk. From prison. He asked for a call through his lawyer. Sarah looked at me like she'd punch a wall if I said yes. But I did. Not for him. For me. When his voice came through the phone, it sounded smaller. Stripped of confidence. No smooth edges left. I never thought it'd go this far, he said. I let the silence sit. I just needed time, he continued. I thought once I fixed my situation, I'd make it right. That's the lie men like him always cling to. Future apologies for present damage. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I told him exactly one thing. You didn't fail because you were caught, I said. You failed because you thought I was disposable. He didn't respond. The line went quiet. I hung up first. After that call, something in me settled. I wasn't waiting for justice anymore. I was living inside it. But peace has a way of inviting truth. And the truth that came next, from someone completely unexpected, changed how I understood everything Richard had been building in the dark. Because it turned out, I wasn't the only one he was planning to erase. The letter came in a plain white envelope. No return address. That alone made my chest tighten. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the counter and just stared at it like it might move on its own. After everything we'd been through, I didn't trust silence anymore. Sarah was with me that afternoon. She noticed my hands shaking. "Mom," she said softly, "what is it?" I slid the envelope toward her. She frowned. "You want me to open it?" "No," I said. "If it's poison, it should hit me first." Inside was one sheet of paper. Typed. Clean. Careful. No threats. No anger. Just truth. It was from a woman named Marilyn. She wrote that she'd been married to Richard's older cousin for almost 20 years. Said she read about Richard's conviction in the local paper, and felt like she was reading her own future in advance. Her words cut straight through me. "He's been telling people I'm forgetful," she wrote. "That I mix things up. That I shouldn't handle money anymore." Sound familiar? She said documents had started appearing on the kitchen table. Papers she didn't recognize. Explanations that felt rushed. Smiles that didn't reach the eyes. She ended the letter with one sentence that made me sit down hard. "I think he learned it from Richard." That's when I understood something that chilled me deeper than any courtroom. This wasn't one man. It was a pattern. A way of thinking passed around like bad advice at a dinner table. Sarah read the letter twice. Her face went pale. "He taught them how to do it," she whispered. I nodded. "Or proved you could." We called Marilyn that night. She cried before she even finished saying hello. She said she felt crazy. Said everyone kept telling her she was overreacting. That she was lucky to have family willing to help. That word again. Help. The most dangerous word when it comes wrapped in control. I didn't tell her what to do. I told her what not to ignore. Your gut. Your paperwork. Your name on your own property. 2 weeks later, she left him. Moved in with her sister. Froze her assets. Filed reports. One decision saved her entire life from being rewritten. And once again, it hit me. Richard didn't just plan theft. He normalized it. Like it was reasonable. Like it was practical. Like age-erased ownership. After that, the calls didn't stop. Different voices. Same story. A niece. A church friend. A woman from the grocery store who recognized me. I wasn't famous. I was useful. And for the first time in my life, that didn't mean being used. It meant being heard. One afternoon, a social worker came by my house. Younger woman. Sharp eyes. Tired smile. She said my case had become a training example. "They show your testimony to new investigators," she said. "It helps them understand how quiet this abuse can be." I laughed softly. "Quiet was my specialty," I said. She didn't laugh. "That's why it works." That night, I sat on my porch watching the sun go down, thinking about how many women were sitting in houses they paid for, feeling like guests in their own lives. I thought about how easily I could have disappeared. No crime scene. No violence. Just paperwork and patience. And then something happened that truly stunned me. Richard's sister showed up at my door. I hadn't seen her since the trial. She looked smaller. Older. Like guilt had weight. She didn't ask to come in. She just said, "I owe you an apology." She admitted she'd heard him joke about me before. About when the house would finally be available. She admitted she laughed. Because it didn't feel real then. I thought he was just venting, she said. I didn't think he meant it. I looked her straight in the eyes. That's how it starts, I said. With people deciding not to think. She cried. I didn't comfort her. Not out of cruelty. Out of honesty. Some lessons stick better when they sting. After she left, I realized something else. Richard hadn't just underestimated me. He underestimated time. He thought age made me weak. But age made me observant. It taught me patience. It taught me to survive long enough to tell the truth. And the truth was spreading. Quietly. Relentlessly. But just when I thought the story was done, wrapped, closed, filed away, something came to light that tied everything together. Something buried. Something legal. Something that explained how he thought he'd never get caught. And once I saw it, I understood exactly how close I came to losing everything without anyone ever raising their voice. Weeks had passed since Richard's sentencing, but the aftershocks kept hitting like tidal waves. You think a storm passes, then suddenly it circles back from another angle. That's life, I realized, especially when your battles involve people who think they own the world, and sometimes, they almost do. One afternoon, I was sorting through old bills and statements when I noticed something odd. A letter from a title company, thick, official-looking, sealed in cream-colored paper. I hadn't requested it. I frowned, my hands shaking a little, not from age, but from that familiar pinch of instinct, the one that screams something isn't right. Sarah was visiting that day, and I waved her over. Look at this, I said, sliding the envelope across the counter. She picked it up, eyebrows knitting together. What is it? I don't know yet. But I feel it in my bones, this is connected to him. We opened it together. It was a title search report for my property. Everything looked normal at first glance. The house was still mine, paid in full, locks changed, safe bolted tight. But then Sarah's finger paused over a line, and her eyes widened. Mom, look at this date, she said. I leaned closer. My stomach dropped. It was a recording of a lien, something Richard had tried to file months before his arrest. A quiet, legal trick. The lien had been blocked just in time, but if it had gone through, he could have started a chain reaction. Banks would have frozen accounts. Credit lines could have been affected. My house could have been under threat, my money in limbo, and would never have known until it was too late. I felt the old anger rise, sharp and bitter. That man had built a plan so layered, so cunning, it almost worked even from behind bars. Sarah placed her hand on my arm. Mom, you caught it just in time. But we need to be thorough. We need to see if there's anything else he tried to hide. We spent that evening combing through everything. Receipts, bank statements, emails, phone messages. Sarah logged it all in a spreadsheet, color-coded and detailed like an FBI report. I marveled at her focus. It reminded me of the little girl I raised, curious, determined, unafraid. By the end of the night, we had unearthed another pattern. Richard had a network, a small one, but dangerous. Friends in real estate, a lawyer or two who bent the rules, even a bank teller who'd been willing to bend under pressure. It was a web he'd spun quietly enough that we never noticed, but messy enough that it could have buried me. We made a plan. Sarah called Mr. Peterson immediately, walking him through everything we had uncovered. He listened carefully, making notes, and then said what I had half expected. Mrs. Eleanor, your instincts were right. This man wasn't sloppy. He planned layers, contingencies, backup plans. But you caught him because you were vigilant. Most people would have missed this entirely. I felt a swell of pride, and a pang of exhaustion. Vigilance at 72 is not as easy as it used to be. My knees ached, my back reminded me constantly of decades of scrubbing floors and hauling buckets, but my mind was sharp. And this time, my mind had to stay sharp, because Richard's influence had spread further than we realized. Then came the letters. Anonymous this time, always postmarked from different towns, always vague, but unmistakably threatening in tone. Keep quiet, one read. Another, you don't know what's coming. I put them in a drawer, untouched. I refused to let fear have the power it once had. You can't ignore it, Sarah said. We'll get the authorities involved if it escalates. I know, I replied. But right now, I want to understand it. He wanted control. He wanted fear. If we show him neither, he loses both. And then the phone call came that made my heart skip. It was Marilyn, the woman who had written me earlier, the one who had escaped her own nightmare thanks to our advice. They are back, she whispered. I froze. Who? I asked. The people Richard worked with, they are trying to make contact. Emails, calls, they are looking for me. They might come for you too. It's not just him anymore. It's the network. I could hear Sarah behind me, whispering, Mom, stay calm. But calm was harder now. My life, my daughter, my granddaughter, all of it had been built back from the brink once. I wasn't about to let it collapse again. We spent the next week tracing the threads, using secure lines, burner emails, locked filing cabinets. Every step Richard had taken, every little detail he had manipulated, we counted with a shield of caution, legal action, and watchful eyes. Then came the visit from the district attorney's office. Mr. Peterson had arranged it. A team of investigators, young and determined, came to my home to review everything we'd gathered. They were shocked at the depth of Richard's planning. They promised to track down anyone still acting on his behalf. After they left, I walked through my home slowly, touching the walls, the furniture, my safe. Everything was mine. Everything protected. And yet, I felt the weight of what had almost been lost. Years of fear, humiliation, and near loss of control had left scars. But they were fading, replaced by resilience, by knowledge that I was no longer alone. That night, I sat on my porch with Chloe, who had been home for the weekend. She leaned against me, sleepy eyes shining. Grandma, she said softly, we are safe, right? I kissed the top of her head. As safe as we can be. But you remember what I told you, baby girl. Safe doesn't mean careless. Always pay attention. Always protect what's yours. Always listen to that little voice inside you. She nodded, half asleep, and I realized she had already absorbed so much of what I had learned the hard way. I thought about Richard, sitting in prison, probably planning something new even now. But for the first time in decades, I didn't feel powerless. I had fought. I had won. And I had taught my daughter and granddaughter to do the same. Yet, even as the night sky darkened over my little garden, I knew the story wasn't finished. People like Richard don't vanish quietly. Networks don't dissolve overnight. And threats, once set in motion, sometimes linger like shadows at the edge of a room. But I also knew something else. We were no longer the ones hiding. We were the ones standing tall. We were watching. We were ready. And if anyone dared touch what we had rebuilt, they would learn just how dangerous a quiet, patient family can be. The weeks following Richard's arrest felt like I was finally breathing fresh air for the first time in years. Every morning I woke up in my house, the house I had fought to keep, I felt it, the weight of freedom and dignity. It's funny how little things hit differently after a battle like ours. The creak of the stairs, the hum of the fridge, even the sunlight spilling through the kitchen window felt like small victories. Sarah and Chloe became my constant shadows, not in a clingy way, but in a way that made me feel untouchable. They had grown into warriors themselves. Sarah was fierce, but tempered now by experience, and Chloe, well, Chloe had inherited my stubborn streak and my sense of justice, wrapped in youth and energy. Together, we had rebuilt more than my house, we had rebuilt trust, love, and a sense of safety that no man could shake. One sunny afternoon, Sarah came over with her usual grin, carrying a box full of paperwork. Mom, she said, plopping down at the kitchen table, we need to review everything. Banks, documents, accounts, you know the drill. I chuckled, shaking my head. Girl, at this point, I think we've covered every angle. But all right, let's do it. We went through everything meticulously. Every account, every loan, every property document. Mr. Peterson had been amazing, but there was no harm in double-checking. After all, this wasn't just about money, it was about peace of mind. As we worked, I noticed Chloe sitting quietly by the window, laptop open, headphones in. She was editing the documentary she had started months ago, the one about us, the women who refused to be pushed aside. I could see her fingers flying across the keys, piecing together our story, but more than that, sending a message: we survived. We fought. We won. I walked over, standing behind her chair, watching the screen. You know, I said softly, this isn't just a project. This is power. This is proof that no one, no matter how clever or cruel, can take away what's ours if we stand together. She looked up and smiled, eyes sparkling. I want other people to see that, Grandma. Older women like you, women like Mom, we can fight. We can protect ourselves. And maybe we can stop someone else from going through what we went through. I nodded. Pride swelled in my chest, bigger than it had felt in years. That was the real victory, not the money, not the court cases, not even Richard rotting in a cell. It was that my daughter and granddaughter would grow up knowing that justice, courage, and dignity are always worth fighting for. Then came the call from the district attorney's office. They wanted me to come in, nothing urgent, just a meeting to discuss some loose ends and ensure Richard's accomplices were fully investigated. I didn't flinch. I knew my story, I knew the truth, and now, I had witnesses, documents, and my family standing behind me. The DA's office was buzzing when we arrived. Sarah and Chloe flanked me like soldiers. Mr. Peterson had joined, calm as ever, holding a thick folder filled with evidence. The investigators were professional, but I could tell they were impressed. It's one thing to read about a criminal plot, it's another to meet the person who caught it before it destroyed an innocent life. By the end of the meeting, they reassured me that all loose threads were being tied. Richard's network was being dismantled, and the chances of anyone else attempting what he did were slim to none. Walking out of that building, I felt lighter than I had in decades. The city noise didn't bother me, the people rushing past didn't intimidate me. I had my family, my home, and my dignity intact. And now, I had peace of mind. Back home, we celebrated quietly. Sarah had brought homemade cupcakes, Chloe had brewed strong coffee, and I just sat there, soaking it all in. Mom, Sarah said, nudging me gently, you realize something, right? I raised an eyebrow. What's that? She smiled, tears glinting. You are unstoppable. Not just in court, not just in life, you're unstoppable in spirit. You showed me, and Chloe, what it means to fight and win. What it means to protect what's ours. And you did it with grace, no matter how angry or scared you were. I laughed softly, a little embarrassed. Grace, her. I was probably yelling in my head half the time. But I guess we did it. Chloe joined in, hugging both of us. We did it, Grandma. We really did. And this documentary, it's gonna teach so many people. They are gonna know that strength doesn't fade with age. That courage doesn't have an expiration date. And that family, real family, fights for each other, always. I felt tears well up, but they weren't the tears of fear or humiliation anymore. They were tears of relief, pride, and love. Weeks turned into months. I settled into a rhythm I had since before Richard entered our lives. Coffee in the morning, reading the newspaper, tending to my small garden, chatting with neighbors, laughing with Sarah and Chloe. Life was simple, yes, but it was full of love, dignity, and freedom. One afternoon, I found myself staring at the mailbox, expecting bills or junk mail. Instead, there was an envelope with my name, written in neat, familiar handwriting. I opened it carefully. Inside was a short note from a woman in another state, thanking me. She had read about our story, through Chloe's documentary being shared online, and she wrote that she felt inspired to stand up against her greedy relatives. I folded the note and held it close. That's when I realized the full impact of what we had done. This wasn't just about protecting our home. It wasn't just about catching Richard or securing the future for Sarah and Chloe. It was about sending a message to every woman who had ever been silenced, humiliated, or threatened. I smiled, the first deep, long smile in a long time. At 72, with white hair and hands worn from work, I felt a power I had never known, the power of survival, of resilience, and of legacy. Because in the end, family isn't just who shares your blood. Family is who stands by your side when the world tries to crush you. Family is who fights with you and for you when you can't fight alone. And I had mine. The house was quiet that evening. Sarah and Chloe had gone to a friend's place, leaving me in my little sanctuary. I poured a cup of tea and sat on the porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky with pink and gold. I whispered softly, more to myself than anyone else, I fought. I won. And no one will ever take that from me. And for the first time in decades, the world felt safe, right, and ours.